My neighbor called the cops every week, so I made their house the city's problem. You probably think I overreacted, or that I must be some kind of monster, but let me tell you, when you are constantly harassed, when you feel like you can't even breathe in your own home because some entitled busybody is weaponizing law enforcement against you, you reach a breaking point. I'm not talking about loud parties or construction. I'm talking about a couple arguing, the sound of a washing machine, or, God help me, the sound of my dog walking across the floor. I'm talking about having my life ruined by a simple phone call, week after week, month after month, until I realized I had to fight back, not with noise, but with paperwork, persistence, and a very deep dive into the city's municipal codes. So, before you judge the nuclear option I eventually took, I have to ask you, if your peace and sanity were stolen by one person who refused to stop, was I wrong to use the law to make their life just as miserable? Let me take you back to the beginning. My wife, Sarah, and I bought our house 4 years ago. It was our dream home, a cozy Tooth, Tory craftsman in a well-established, quiet suburb. We weren't wealthy, but we had saved and worked for a decade to afford this place. We closed the deal, moved in, and for the first 6 months it was perfect. Then the nightmare arrived in the form of a silver minivan and a couple named the Reynolds, Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, who moved into the identical house right next door. They were instantly cold. We tried to be good neighbors. We waved, offered to help them move furniture, and brought over a little housewarming gift basket. Mrs. Reynolds accepted the basket with a look that suggested we just handed her a box of live spiders, and Mr. Reynolds just grunted and turned his back. We took the hint. They weren't interested in being friends, which was fine by us. We just wanted to be left alone. The first incident happened about a month after they moved in. It was a Saturday morning, maybe 10:30 a.m. Sarah and I were just finishing breakfast, and our golden retriever, Gus, a very sweet and mellow dog, was playing with a squeaky toy. The kind that makes a low, rubbery sound, nothing piercing. Suddenly, there was this violent, frantic banging on our door. I opened it to find Mr. Reynolds, his face bright red, looking like he was about to spontaneously combust. He didn't even say hello. He just screamed, "Are you deaf? That noise is ridiculous. I'm trying to read the paper. Control your animal or I'm calling the city." I was stunned. It was 10:30 a.m., not 3 a.m., and it was a mild, squeaky toy. I apologized awkwardly, which was a mistake, and told him we would stop. Sarah put the toy away, and that was that, we thought. But that was just the appetizer. The calls started shortly after. The police would show up, usually an hour or two after we did something entirely mundane. I remember the first time the patrol car pulled up. It was a Tuesday evening. We were having a mildly heated discussion about where we should go for vacation, nothing yelling. Just raised voices as couples sometimes do when arguing about money. 20 minutes later, there's a knock, and a very bored-looking officer is standing there. "Sir, we received a call about a domestic disturbance, loud noise." I looked at Sarah, mouth agape. I had to explain, sheepishly, that we were just talking about Bali versus Cancun. The officer clearly thought we were wasting his time, looked skeptical, wrote down some notes, and left. But the message from the Reynolds was clear. Any audible noise coming from our property was grounds for police intervention. It escalated rapidly. Over the next year, the complaints became utterly absurd. The noise complaint on a Sunday afternoon because I was using my lawnmower at 2 p.m. The complaint because we were unloading groceries at 8 p.m. and the car door shut too loudly. The complaint because our washing machine was running on a Friday evening. My favorite, the one that truly broke me, was the time the police showed up because Gus, our dog, was scratching his ear on the hardwood floor, and the tapping sound apparently disrupted their ability to enjoy their property. Every time the police showed up, it was humiliating. The neighbors would look. The officers were clearly annoyed, and sometimes I felt they were starting to think I was the problem. just because they kept getting calls about my address. I started living in a state of hyper-vigilance, walking on eggshells in my own home, afraid to sneeze too loud or watch a movie after 9 p.m. My anxiety was through the roof. Sarah started whispering instead of talking. We were prisoners. We tried everything. We talked to them again. A calm, neighborly approach. We were told simply, we moved here for the quiet. If you can't provide it, you should leave. We contacted a mediator, but they refused to participate. We called the non-emergency police line to complain about the harassment, but the police told us, we have to respond to all calls. If they keep calling, we keep showing up. It's a civil matter. We felt completely trapped. The only option seemed to be selling the house we loved and moving away just to escape the Reynolds. But the idea of letting them win after all the stress they caused was infuriating. One rainy Saturday, after the 5th police visit that month for a reason I can't even remember, I was sitting in my living room, staring at the wall, feeling defeated. That's when I had the realization. The Reynolds were masters of using the system, the police, as their personal weapon. They weren't violating a noise ordinance. They were violating the spirit of the law through hyper-technicality and relentless abuse of the 911 system. If they could use technicality to harass me, I could use technicality to defend myself, but not just defend, I could attack. I decided to dedicate myself to becoming a local code enforcement expert. I spent the next few weekends doing nothing but reading the entire municipal code book for our city. It was the driest, most boring reading material on earth, but I was motivated by pure, cold rage and a desire for sweet, sweet justice. I learned about zoning laws, building permits, property line restrictions, easement rules, and most importantly, I learned about small violations that nobody ever cares about until someone weaponizes them. I was hunting for the Achilles heel of the Reynolds' seemingly perfect, quiet little life. It took me 3 solid weeks of research, comparing satellite photos to building codes and cross-referencing old property deeds. And then I found it. It was beautiful. The Reynolds had built a massive, ornate wooden deck in their backyard about 5 years prior. It was professionally done, looked great, and was clearly expensive. But in our neighborhood, due to the tight lots, any structure over 30 inches off the ground, or any structure covering more than 10% of the backyard footprint, required a specific structural integrity permit and had to be set back a minimum of 5 feet from the property line. Now, for 99% of people, this is a rubber stamp. You get the permit, you build it, and everyone moves on. But the Reynolds had made a fatal mistake. They had built the deck 4 feet from the property line, which meant it violated the setback rule by a full foot, and they had apparently never filed for or received the official permit. They had just built it. Their house was structurally identical to mine, and my house plans showed a strict 5-foot setback requirement. Their deck was too big, too close, and probably undocumented. They had been so focused on policing my mundane, livable noise. They had ignored a very real, very expensive violation right in their own backyard. So that's the situation I was in. I had this piece of paper, the city code, that gave me the power to legally obliterate their prized backyard project. It was the key to turning their comfortable existence into a bureaucratic nightmare of fines, inspections, and mandatory demolition. The revenge was right there, sitting in my hands, hidden in a dusty old book. But I had to make a choice. If I went through with this, it was war, not just petty squabbling. There would be no turning back. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have walked away and sold the house, or would you have used the code to destroy the source of your neighbor's peace? I decided they had crossed the line when they made my wife cry after the washing machine incident. They had taken my peace, and now I was going to collect. I spent the next day meticulously documenting everything. I took precise measurements of the deck from my side of the property line using a contractor's tape measure. I printed out the relevant sections of the city code, highlighting the exact sections on setbacks and structural permits. I gathered all the police reports I could remember being filed against us, showing the pattern of nuisance calls and abuse. Then I didn't call the police. I went straight to the city planning and zoning enforcement department. I didn't go in hot. I went in measured and professional. I sat down with a caseworker and presented my file. I started by explaining the harassment. I've had over 20 police visits in the last 18 months for normal household noise, ma'am, and I have all the corresponding police reports right here. This neighbor has weaponized the police against us to the point of harassment. However, I'm not here about the noise. I am here because, while investigating the laws to protect myself, I discovered a significant, long-standing, and potentially dangerous structural violation on their property that, given their disregard for city codes, must be addressed for the safety of the neighborhood. I handed her the packet detailing the setback violation and the likely lack of a permit for their deck. The caseworker's eyes widened. Police calls are a nuisance. Unpermitted, structurally non-compliant building is a serious liability and a huge headache for the city. She immediately saw this wasn't a petty neighbor dispute. It was a formal complaint about a serious city ordinance violation. She thanked me for my diligence and promised an inspector would be out within the week. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in 2 years. I hadn't had to yell, scream, or break anything. I had just leveraged the system the Reynolds used so well, only I used it correctly. The climax arrived a week later. I was in my home office when I saw the official city vehicle pull up. A beat-up sedan with code enforcement, plastered on the door. The inspector, a stocky guy with a clipboard, went right into the Reynolds yard. Within 5 minutes, I heard a loud, frantic voice, Mrs. Reynolds, followed by the deep, angry rumble of Mr. Reynolds. I couldn't hear the specifics, but I could hear the tone of escalating panic and outrage. The inspector didn't budge. He stayed professional, pointing at the deck, pointing at his clipboard, and taking pictures. He spent a full 20 minutes there, and when he left, the Reynolds were standing on their lawn, looking utterly shocked. The peace lasted exactly 2 days. On the 3rd day, a certified letter arrived for the Reynolds from the city, which they ignored, of course. Then the brightly colored official stop work / violation notice was plastered right on the pillar of their deck. It was impossible to miss. It cited the failure to secure the required structural integrity permit and the 5-foot setback violation. The notice had bold red text. Failure to comply within 30 days will result in daily fines and mandatory demolition. They tried to fight it. Oh, how they fought it. They tried to get a retroactive permit, but the city told them the setback was non-negotiable and the deck, as built, could not be permitted. They hired a lawyer, who told them they had no case unless they wanted to spend a fortune petitioning the city for a variance that they were unlikely to get. I saw the lawyer's car pull up and then quickly leave. They finally realized this wasn't a noise complaint they could lie their way out of. This was a formal legal process. The aftermath was glorious, albeit messy. They had to demolish the deck themselves. It took them weeks. I sat on my porch and watched as the people who had cost me my sanity, spent every weekend tearing down their beautiful, expensive structure, board by agonizing board. The irony was palpable. The noise of their demolition was deafening. I considered calling the police for a noise complaint, but that would have been petty, even for me. I just watched, drank a cup of coffee, and enjoyed the silence that followed the thunk of every beam hitting the ground. They lost their favorite outdoor space. They lost thousands of dollars, and they paid a hefty fine to the city. They never called the police on me again, not once. They still live there, and they still hate me, but they look away whenever they see us. The fear in their eyes is gone, replaced by a quiet, simmering defeat. They know exactly who did this and why. and they know that I am the quiet neighbor who has the patience and the code book to make their life a living hell if they ever start up their petty harassment again. Sarah and I finally got our home back. We now watch movies with the surround sound on, and when Gus chases a toy, we just laugh. We learned that sometimes the most effective revenge is not loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, meticulous, and delivered via registered mail. It was a stressful way to win my peace, but given the circumstances, I wouldn't change a thing. So, that is my story of the noise-compliant nightmare, and how I used the city's codebook to finally silence my bullies. Like this video if you were on my side and think they absolutely got what they deserved. I want to know your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What was the dirtiest trick they pulled on me, and was my revenge too much? Subscribe for more stories like this where justice is served, one way or another. I'll see you all in the next story.